way to save the world is to keep this world from ever happening.
If you haven't heard, DC animation is dead. Sad, violent music. But yeah, so apparently, well, not apparently, it's been pretty much confirmed that anything DC related, any DC animated projects, with the exception of My Adventures with Superman, is pretty much dead in the waters. If you guys aren't familiar, and not too long ago, we got the third installment of the Tomorrowverse version of Crisis on Infinite Earths, if I remember correctly, and with the ending of that movie being revealed, pretty much anything pre James Gunn DCU is pretty much erased from existence. That includes Young Justice, anything 2003 Teen Titans related, or 2004, whatever the case is. And pretty much the original DC animated universe is dead in the water. Like, you probably won't see any of those projects ever, if not for like a long time from now, maybe like 10 years from now, or I'm sorry, like 10 to 15 years. I don't know why I said 10 to 10, but yeah, pretty much anything DC animated related that's not coming out from the DCU is pretty much dead. And why they did this, well, if you're not familiar, James Gunn, the creative behind the infamous Guardians of the Galaxy and the 2021 Suicide Squad, is bringing us a new DC universe called the DCU, with his first installment titled Superman. Originally it was called Superman Legacy, but now it's just called Superman. And honestly, I gotta say, I'm kind of disappointed after watching a little bit of the Tomorrowverse, if that's what it's called. I can see why they wanted to end that universe, because man, it doesn't really compare anything to the New 52 animation, because in my opinion, the New 52 animation, a line of movies, I grew up with those books, like when I was back in high school. I know people aren't the biggest fan of the New 52 timeline in DC Comics, but to me, I really found it pretty interesting. Being like, I was kind of a kid, I was like fresh in the comic books, the New 52, I always found it pretty cool. Now as like a more adult reader, I think the New 52 had its issues. It had good concepts, but it had its issues. The great thing out of the New 52 has got to be, what was it, Scott Snyder's Batman. They gave us Court of the Owls, which has instantly become one of like Batman's best comic book runs. Pretty good, Court of the Owls. But while the New 52 comic line might not be the best, the New 52 animated verse that came out with the introduction of Flashpoint, it's pretty good, actually. Pretty good. I remember when Justice League War first came out, a lot of people kind of gave it harsh take on it. They weren't really the biggest fan of it because it adapted the freaking book, which some people say it's a hit or miss. Fun fact about the book, I actually have about the New 52 book, like I actually have a volume myself. I actually got Jason Momoa's like autograph on here. I don't remember when I actually got it. All I know is I got it like a few years ago at one of the conventions, which was pretty cool. But that being said, the New 52 animated verse, I was pretty much a big fan of it. I mean, Throne of Atlantis wasn't the best, but pretty much every movie after that was pretty much a big banger, with the exception of maybe the Wonder Woman film Bloodlines. It was an alright film, and whenever the New 52 line of movies ended with, what was it, Doomsday War or Apocalypse War, it was pretty saddening just to see all your favorite characters just pretty much be killed in that way. And at the end of that movie, it essentially led up to the Tomorrowverse, which came out like not even a decade ago, if I'm gonna be honest. Like, the Tomorrowverse didn't even last 10 years. It lasted maybe, what, 3-5 years? It didn't last long at all. I don't think it was too popular for many reasons. It was just pretty much canned. And when James Gunn took over DC, they pretty much decided, all right, we're gonna reboot everything, and everything's pretty much gonna be connected. Like, there's gonna be a new multiverse, all sorts of stuff. So anything animated that has come before is dead in the water. Pretty much my best example to compare this to is kind of like how when Disney bought out Star Wars. So anything like after the Disney purchase, which wasn't the Clone Wars, is pretty much considered old continuity, old expanded universe. Anything EU, or it was considered Legends, which most people can agree, like, terrible take. Like, Legends had its issues, but it also had its good moments, kind of like how the new DC continuity is going to be. So essentially anything animated, anything video game, anything live action, anything television related, it's all going to be interconnected to this new DCU timeline. And you can't really have an interconnected timeline with like so many other versions pretty much existing. This is why they're ending anything of the CW verse like related. That's why the latest Superman show, not the Adventures with Superman, but Superman and Lois, it's pretty much being canceled. It's pretty much going on its final season because they want to make way for like this new universe. They want to like create new stories and give a breath of fresh air, which to me, I gotta admire James Gunn because he's doing something bold. Not too many people like are the biggest fans of this. Not too many people are the biggest fans of James Gunn because they just don't like James Gunn's direction and like some of his personal takes. But to me, you always gotta separate the art from the artist. He's a pretty good director. He's made some pretty good films, so I 100% trust his version of the DCU. It's gonna be different from like the DCEU, which we had before, which is darker, which was grittier. This new Superman take is essentially gonna be a more hopeful line of film, and like going forward, I know we're gonna have like a great start to the DCU, but the fact that they pretty much canned the entirety of DC animation just to make way for this new lineup doesn't really sit right with me. Does this mean we're never gonna get Young Justice season 5? Maybe, maybe not, because I know Young Justice season 4, and that's a different story for a different video, was kind of alright. Like, I wasn't really the biggest fan of Young Justice season 4, so there were some certain parts of it I skipped out and just missed out because I really found it boring in general. But season 3, I really liked Outsiders. As much as people diss on it, I found it pretty enjoyable. But anything like besides a potential Young Justice season 5 to end out the story, we're never really gonna get like, we're never gonna get the original Teen Titans back. We're not gonna get more Super Friends. We're not getting anything related to the Tomorrowverse or the New 52 lineup because those universes are dead. Flashpoint essentially cooked anything before, and even from the 90s, like DC animated universe, like the 90s show you grew up with, Batman Beyond, Batman animated series, is pretty much dead. And the new Batman show that's coming up, Batman Crusaders, pretty much its own thing. I don't know if it's considered part of the new DCU timeline, if it's canon to the new multiverse, but it may or may not be. Essentially, that's its own thing, so it doesn't really have anything to do with that since it was purchased by Amazon, so Amazon now has the rights to that. It's not going to be streaming on Max or anything like that. But yeah, this is pretty much the future of DC. Like, animation is pretty much dead, so we have to wait a few more years till after the DCU starts, maybe like a year from now, when we get Creature Commandos, which is technically the first DC animated project. Like, Tomorrow versus Dead, New 52 is dead. What's gonna happen from here? I really don't know. Like, what the future is gonna hold for DC animation, we can only hope and see, man, because like there's so much wasted potential in canceling like all the other DC animated projects. Granted, some, if not most of them, were kind of trash. Y'all can hate me for that, but yeah, like I said, Young Justice season 4 was alright season in my opinion. In my opinion, also, I do feel like they've dragged out Young Justice a bit too much. Tomorrowverse was alright. Like, it was okay. Even it felt more lazy. Like, if we're gonna be honest, the art style, the direction felt a bit lazy. The New 52 did it right. They shouldn't have continued it up until that end. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's just my thoughts. DC animation is pretty much it up until the new DCU timeline begins. So if you want anything DC animated related, expect the new Batman show, which comes out pretty soon actually. And besides that, I don't think we're gonna get anything like DC animated till maybe 2026, maybe 2027. So we'll have to wait and see how things play out. But yeah, DC animation is dead. That hashtag DC animation is dead. So yeah.